$100, a Super Nintendo setup costs twice as much as the old system. For the money, the company promises better pictures, sound, and adventure. Now you're playing with power, superpower. You're the king, I tell you! The king!
Only for Super NES. You're listening to the SNES podcast with your host, Soul Blazer.
Hello everybody, this is Super NES Podcast, episode number 178. As always, I'm Greg, joined by Joe.
Hi. Sorry, kind of missed my cue there.
Yeah, that's fine. But and for this episode, it's just the two of us this time. We have a few more guest host appearances planned for the future, but for the next at least a month or 6 weeks or so, just gonna be us. And I thought I'd throw Joe a bone for some of the games that we've had recently, and ask him if he wanted to talk about a wrestling game because he's a big wrestling fan. So I did not plan to cover another Natsume game. It just kind of worked out this way. But in any event, we're looking at another Natsume game this time around. We're looking at Natsume Championship Wrestling, which is a conversion of a Japanese wrestling game called I'm going to try the Japanese title here, Zen Nippon Pursue Saki Seiyo Tegu Deshu, which basically translates as All Japan Pro Wrestling's World's Strongest Tag Dash.
Which also, this is the eventually evolves into the Fire Pro Wrestling series. So this is the early, the early iterations of it.
Yes, there were three Zen Nippon Pro Wrestling games that came out for the Super Famicom in Japan. This is the only one that came out. That came out in the West. It came out in June of 1994. Because of the fact it's reskinning, it came out in the U.S. market only. U.S. and Canada. However, the game has been re-released in virtual console several times. It was on the Wii. It was on the Wii. It was on the Wii U, and it's also currently on the Switch. So if you want to play it, which we'll get into eBay pricing later on, getting on the Switch may be the best way for you to do that. So, but anyway, yeah. So this game in Japan was licensed. The Japanese version of the game featured wrestlers from the All Japan Pro Wrestling League, which was a thing back in the 90s, which had curiously enough, both Japanese and American wrestlers. I didn't realize that. Yeah, yep. So, Natsume, to save money, decided not to work the license when the license came over. They ported the game. The wrestlers' names have all been changed. However, the stats, the pictures are left alone. Well, I'm sorry, the picture were changed too, but the stats are all there though. So, a big wrestling fan in the area will probably recognize who's who in this game. So. I don't know how your knowledge is of 90 wrestlers, Joe, so I don't know if you recognize anybody in this playing this game or not.
So, one of them kind of looked like Mr. Perfect, kind of, but that's the closest that I came to, and I couldn't remember Mr. Perfect, or also known by his real name, Kurt Hennig, when he would have been over there in Japan. I don't remember him ever actually wrestling for All Japan Pro Wrestling, so I couldn't confirm nor, be able to deny that, it is or isn't.
Well, I had the list later on, who's based off who, so we can go over
okay, perfect.
Later on. But, so, as a wrestling, the wrestling game, first appearances, this wrestling game is very similar to many of the wrestling games out there at the time period. Playing several game modes, you can, you can play from, exhibition, which is a way to warm up, just to warm up, simply pick a wrestler, pick somebody to go up against and have at it. There's a round robin tournament, which is kind of nice. There's also a championship tournament where you go through all the wrestlers in the league, one by one. There's 15 wrestlers total. Both the round robin and championship also give you the version of either playing single or tag team. Yeah. So, and the game is multiplayer. Up to 4 people can play. You have the tap. So there is that. And as And as Joe and I were talking about briefly offline before the podcast started, this is more of a game based upon like timing than it's like button mashing. So I know some wrestling games like fighting games where you rely upon just simply trying to hit the button as hard as you can. This game, however, is like more like timing as far as playing the game as well, which also would carry over to the Fire Pro Wrestling series later on. So there's that. So and Joe knows a lot more about wrestling than I do. He's a much bigger fan. He's a much bigger fan. Well, he is a fan of the sport than I am. I really only have a passing interest in wrestling, but so I'm going to ask Joe to explain basically how the game plays and how it operates for us.
Yeah, I mean, you have your general moves and controls that you would expect. You got your punch, you got your kick, you have your grapple. The variant grapples, you have a strong, a light, and a medium. Obviously, in a grapple, you can Irish whip your opponent, throwing them into the ropes or the turnbuckle. You have your run button, and then you have your abilities to tag in and out. It's all about timing. It's very much chain wrestling. When it comes to those grapples, you can get your opponent into a headlock, and then there's certain grapples that you can do. You can force them down onto the mat and get them into a submission, or you can flip them around and end up doing a power bomb. Or what was one of the other ones that I saw? I remember one of them, like, they started off as a grapple, and then like the guy pulled apart, guy bounced off the ropes and just did like a running lariat out of nowhere. And I was just like, okay, like, like it looked like they just released, you know what I mean? So it was kind of like, okay, why is that guy just standing there? Almost like real wrestling when something like that happens. You go, okay, well, why did that guy stand there? Well, you want some realism there. So at this time, if I had a Super Nintendo, I probably would have had Royal Rumble, because I think that was the first one released out of the two series, Rumble and Raw. And then you have WrestleMania, Super WrestleMania also out at about this time. And those are very, very different than this here.
Yes, they are. Yeah.
And I can't remember if you've talked about those games in the past or not.
We have covered the rest of the game.
Okay.
The WWF game in the past.
Yeah, so I mean, those games are very much like mash the button as hard as you can, especially when you're in a grapple, to gain control, and then you can just go and do whatever you do to your opponent. This one, if you mash the button at all, you are going to get your butt kicked. You will never be able to tie up with anybody. The advantage will always be to the computer, and you may get a punch or two in, but that's it. I lost my first match because I did not realize how this game plays and all that. I lost my first match, like, it was ridiculous. I think I had 2 good punches on the guy, and that was it. Like, he just laid me out. And then, of course, then I dug deep and found out, this is like the very first iteration of what would be Fire Pro Wrestling, and then I realized how the mechanics worked, and I still got my butt kicked because I'm not very good at Fire Pro Wrestling. But I at least kind of knew what I was doing. And I do like the different branches of, options that you have. So you have the Championship Tournament mode, which has you face off against the entire roster. It's all one-on-one matches, and it's obviously the ultimate goal is to become the world champion. Then you have the Championship Tag match, which is the same thing, except for you're doing it in a tag. And I can't quite remember if Championship Tag match lets you choose your tag team opponent or not. I do know that round robin tag match, they force you to pick a pre-made tag team. You can't just randomly choose people. And then
championship is random.
Okay,
you pick the team, and you can't pick your partner per se. You pick the team that you
Okay, so yeah, so it's the same thing as round robin tag. Okay, which that's one thing in the game when I thought was very weird that they kind of just like, these are the teams that you have. This is the only combination of people that you can have. So
maybe they fought together in real life. Like, I mean, like, who knows? So,
yeah, that's a good question. And at this time, like, as big of a wrestling fan I am, like at this time, All Japan Pro Wrestling was not on my radar. So I couldn't tell you who was there. I couldn't tell you what tag teams were there. None of that stuff. And now, All Japan Pro Wrestling has actually been dissolved. Now it's just New Japan Pro Wrestling. That's all there is. So, I really have no, firsthand knowledge of All Japan Pro Wrestling. It's all in hindsight. So,
yeah. I don't think most Americans would have even if they wanted to, because this was the mid '90s. How many people would like a cable back then? So it's like,
right. It'd be fans like me who would tape trade. You know what I mean? I would. Yeah. I'd record the pay-per-views of the TV shows for the week, and then like you'd go on a forum that was just walls of text because the internet was archaic at the time. And and by doing that, you could trade with people and stuff like that. And sometimes you lost tapes because sometimes people would be like, "Oh yeah, send me your tape, I'll send you mine." And then you'd send out your tape blindly trusting someone, and then they would never contact you again. You would never get anything returned. Yeah, it was a fun time, needless to say.
Right. So to add on what you were saying a moment ago, first of all, let me correct myself. There's actually only 12 wrestlers, so let me get that right. The option screen is pretty basic, but you have the ability to be able to the difficulty level, which is nice. There's three difficulty levels: easy, medium, and hard. So the main difference being that the AI gets better and smarter at the higher levels. Yes. They also have more energy to beat up. So. Speaking about which, the energy bar system, I didn't really care for it too much in this game, because it's like, the system itself is fine. There are 6 levels of energy bars. And as they get hurt, it drops, and once the bar is depleted, a new bar takes over instead. Right. The colors from best to worst are blue, green, yellow, orange, red, and black. Mm-hmm. I just like the color system because I'm like heat of the battle. It's like okay, what color is that? Right. Like, how much farther do I have to go? Like, how hard? How hard slightly actually? I just wish they kept it with like a simple like 1 bar system like left in the bat.
Yeah. No, I hear you.
It's very hard to figure out how much energy somebody has left. So because certain moves you're going to have to pull off if they're obviously hurt. Right. So, no passwords or no passwords to the game, but you are able to continue as much as you want. Yeah. So. If you're good in the game, a typical game could take you like 45 minutes to play through. Mm-hmm. So, not a huge game. What is nice, however, is there's a lot of moves picked from the wrestlers. Altogether, the game has over 50 moves in it. Yeah. So, and each wrestler, I'm not sure if you realize this, Joe. Each wrestler also has special moves, and they also special moves. They also have secret moves. The unique moves that are unique to that wrestler.
The special moves I knew about, and I knew about taunts, which was a big thing that I was surprised to see. Those I knew, but I didn't know about the secret moves. Yeah.
Each wrestler has secret moves. So, a lot of combos in this game, kind of like a fighting game. You're gonna have to take, definitely gonna take some time to try to get the hang of all of them. I never did. I just got the basic ones down pat, but yeah, having either the manual or list online, the game FAQs has a good list of all the moves to help you learn the game. It's like very recommended. So, let's talk gameplay. You already mentioned, Joe, how this is like a timing game as opposed to like button mashing.
Yes.
Once you get used to it, how did you actually like find the game itself play? Do you prefer wrestling games that are button mashing versus timing, or how does that work for you?
I think it really depends on my mood. So like, I enjoy the Fire Pro Wrestling series, and you can see the beginnings of that here. It's very much all grappling and that timing of the button, and strikes whether it be punches or kicks, are kind of secondary, you know, and you can't, you know, you can do them, but like it's not encouraged to be doing like top rope moves or anything like that. It's really a ground based style of wrestling, and you know, like sometimes I'm in the mood for that. Sometimes I'm into like, you know, a technical wrestling match. Sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I just want to pop, you know, WWE 2K20 and just like mash the square button, you know what I mean, until like, you know, my opponent's bleeding all over the place, and then, you know, just for fun, just grab a chair and hit him over the head with it, like, you know what I mean. So it really depends on what you're looking for in a wrestling game and what suits your gameplay style.
Yeah, fair enough. By the same token, the game also kind of discourages like fighting outside the ring.
Yes.
Because you can't tell somebody outside the ring, but it's not rape. It doesn't like do too much for you. You compare to a game like, you know, like the really old. Have you ever played the old NES like pro wrestling game, the Nintendo made?
Yes, I have.
Fighting outside the ring is actually like very useful in that game.
Yes.
So like, you know, I guess like depends. It depends like on the game itself, but yeah, you know, like fair points. Graphics. So graphics for this game, graphics are pretty typical Super NES fare. Fair like this time. The wrestlers look unique at least. You know, like you can recognize which wrestlers which pretty easily based upon their body shape and also upon the color of their pants and whatnot. The referee and the crowd, I guess, is a very Japanese-ish feel to it, because it's like they don't look like typical people like watching a wrestling match. So I guess they're just taking over directly like the Japanese version of the game.
Yeah, I mean, the Japanese are very docile when it comes to wrestling. So like they will, you know, pretty much sit on their hands essentially. Like that's their way of showing respect, being quiet and watching the performance in front of them. And then when there's a big spot or like a big move, then you get like slow claps, you know, and like it's nothing like, you know, here in America watching wrestling where people are going crazy and they're cheering and throwing taunts at the wrestlers and everything. I mean, things have obviously changed in the past, say, you know, 30 years since this game came out. You know, the wrestling business has changed in general. So, like, in New Japan Pro Wrestling, if you've watched any of their, like, they have their big, quote-unquote, WrestleMania show, Wrestle Kingdom, coming up at the beginning of the year. They do it every year for New Year's Day and the following day. Now when you see those events, I mean, not only are Americans flooding those events, which is probably changing the dynamic of them just a little bit, but, like, even, you know, just fans who were young at the time, now growing up, you know, they're more into what's going on, you know, and what was going on here in America. So now they're bringing that over to Japanese wrestling, and you'll see, you know, people cheering during the matches. You'll see people clapping still, but it's like they're doing it throughout the match. It's not just, you know, for those points. You know what I mean? If you watch old, all the Japan Pro Wrestling or old New Japan Pro Wrestling shows, it can be really, really hard as an American because, I mean, one, generally there's only a Japanese commentary track, and two,
of course,
they tell a great story. Like, that's the good thing. Like, they've always told great stories. You don't need the commentary to explain what's going on. You can tell. But it's like, with the crowd not getting into it, like, you almost feel bad for the wrestlers because, like, you're used to, like, them getting the reaction for doing something good, and, like, wrestlers here in America feed off that. But, like, that just wasn't the culture, you know what I mean? So it's just a weird dynamic. It's a weird dynamic.
Right. No, it makes sense. Yeah, definitely. I thought the ring in this game was a bit small compared to some other wrestling games. Like, what do you think?
I mean, for what you're doing in it, I think it's fine. Like I said, if this is one of those, like, Royal Rumble or Raw where, like, you have to, you know, beat the crap out of your opponent and you're doing more strikes and kicks and stuff like that more than you are the mat wrestling, then yes, I agree. It's a small ring. But for this, and it's more mat based, the smaller the ring, it puts more focus on the wrestlers and what you're doing.
Sure, yeah. Plus you have the advantage also, plus you also have the technical advantage that everything fits flying on screen.
Yes.
So, so I think because the fact this game is based more, I think because the fact this game is based more upon timing than like button mashing, the matches are slower, like longer paced. At least to me, but sometimes it could, sometimes it took me like a good 5-6 minutes to actually wear the wrestler out enough finally to the point where I could like pin them and finish it and move on.
Yeah, I was gonna say my average match was generally around like the 10-minute mark, give or take. So, I mean, it takes a while, and you know what I mean. Like, let's be fair. Real wrestling, it takes a while to wear your opponent down. So, you could say this is more of a wrestling sim, whereas Royal Rumble and Raw were more like quote unquote fighting games.
Yeah, right.
That's
Exactly.
the best
So
way I could explain it.
Yeah, you can make examples of other kinds of genres, genre sports games also. Like for example, like take football. Like Madden is a sim of like football games, whereas like the NFL Blitz series was like the arcade style of football games. It all depended on, so it all depends on what you enjoyed, like what you're in the mood for. So, in that light, give the energies. In that light, giving the wrestler so much energy seems to make sense, but it just feels like it takes for a very, very long time to wear out 6 bars of energy.
Yeah, spoiler: this isn't a game I'd recommend to everybody. You know what I mean? Like,
right?
Yeah, this is like, did I enjoy the little bit that I had with it? Sure. But this is not, like, I probably won't go back to this. I'm going to be honest. You know what I mean? I have... So
the sound effects of this game are very keeping what you just said about Japanese wrestling, because it's like, the sound effects of this game are pretty minimal, but what's there is like very good. Right. You have music, music with pleasure in this game. It's a more westernized soundtrack. Mm-hmm. They took out the Japanese music that the original game had and put in put in like more like a rock style for like the Western audience. Mm-hmm. So, which is fine. But sound effects are like like hits, grunts, the audience cheering every now and then. The referee making his countdown, that kind of stuff. So so it works. Mm-hmm. But there's also apparently like an NES version of this game, or they're originally playing, but in the end they decided not to do that. They turn the Super NES version of this game instead. So, anyway, so anything you want to say about the graphics and sound effects yourself, Joe, before we move on?
No, I felt that it was serviceable. It's not an ugly game, but it's also not anything that's going to blow your mind.
Sure. Yep. So, all right, so let's talk wrestlers. So I'll go over the Japanese wrestlers, the Japanese wrestlers like in the game first. Asteroids based upon somebody named Jumbo Tsuruta. Mm-hmm. He can do a jumping knee strike, and also like a power bomb and backdrop. His secret moves are body slam, toss, a bare knuckle punch, and knee lift, and also a body slam toss. So. Mr. Roach is based upon Yoshinari Ogawa. He can do a missile drop kick and release German suplex. Secret moves for him are shoulder throw, bare knuckle punch, special head kick, and shoulder throw. So, Hungry Snake is based upon Masamune Fuchi. He can do a backdrop and single leg Boston Crab. Secret moves are body slam toss, a bare knuckle punch, and flying drop kick to the knees. Viper is based upon Toshikaga Kawada. He can do a diving elbow drop, a dangerous kick, or a backdrop or power bomb. Secret moves for him are Kawada kicks, or shin kick, or knife edge chop. The Phantom's based upon Russia Kimura. He can do a backdrop, a release power bomb. Secret moves are strong elbow strike, a bare knuckle punch, a head kick, and a retreat. Fangs is based upon Akira Tsutsui. He can do a release power bomb and a choke slam. Secret moves are body slam toss, knee lift, knife edge chop, and body slam toss. And finally, and finally, the Japanese roster, you have Conan, who's based upon Kanata Kobashi. He can do a flying shoulder block, a moonsault, or at least power bomb. Secret moves for him are knife edge chop special, a bare knuckle punch, knife edge chop special, and again in a short toss. So the Americans in the roster. King Brute is based upon Terry Gordy. He can do a power slam, a backdrop, a power bomb, and a power bomb. Secret moves for him are body slam, bare knuckle punch, knee lift, flying octopus hold. The Python is based upon Stan the Ladder Hansen. Sorry. He can do a Western Ladders, a backdrop, a strong elbow strike. Secret moves for him are an elbow check, bare knuckle punch, or knee lift, or an octopus hold. Johnny Carraz is based upon Johnny Ace. He can do a release power bomb, an ace cutter. Secret moves for him are body slam, bare knuckle punch, head kick, and octopus hold. Then you have a Big Ape, who's based upon Dr. Death Steve Williams. He can do a release power bomb and power slam. Secret moves for him are an elbow check, bare knuckle punch, a head kick, or like an octopus punch. And finally, you have Spike, who's based upon like the Spry Ivory. He can do a backdrop, a jumping DDT, at least power bomb. Secret moves for him are a body slam toss, bare knuckle punch, head kick, and body slam. So, having said all that, Joe, like who are your favorite wrestlers to play as?
It was either Big Ape or Python. Those were the two big ones, and that's I realized that Python is the one that I thought that kind of looked like Mr. Perfect, and it makes sense. It's Stan Hansen. Stan Hansen was a big dude, but he had the blonde hair, and at one point he probably could have been a good-looking dude if he hadn't wrestled in Japan, to be honest, because Japan was a much more brutal style of wrestling. They do what they call what they call why can I not think of the name of it right now? It's not hard style, but it's that kind of idea that basically the matches are real. Like, they're really hitting each other. They're really laying them in. It's, All Japan Pro Wrestling, New Japan Pro Wrestling. Some of that stuff was like the early start of MMA over there in Japan. A lot of it was shoot wrestling. Like, it was legit. Like, they put two guys in the ring and basically said go at it. Like, there was no predetermined course of action. There was no predetermined winner. They just kind of went strong style. That's what it's called. There we go. So yeah, those two are the brutes of the game, and those are kind of the ones I stuck with.
Okay, yep, that's good. Yeah, I tended to gravitate toward like the Viper and Phantom. So those are the two that I usually like played as. So there actually is a bug in this game, because related to wrestlers and because of the pout swaps that they did. When you finish each game, when you finish each match, which is a nice touch, they also have the post match screen, which they shows that shows a victory and a defeat message like for each wrestler. Like a picture like of each of them. So nice touch. But there's also a bug in this game, which is like if you play through the game as Big Ape, who, like I just said, is based upon Steve Williams, aka Dr. Death. They forgot to do a pout swap for him in the ending sequence for him, so it actually looks more like Steve Williams than he does like Big Ape because of that. So, simple reason because like I said, in Japan the game was licensed, but over here in the West it's not. So they had like change everybody's looks around, but they read about him. Yeah. So, but
by the way,
there are
you went through the roster, but I was kind of shocked that you didn't mention the two tag teams. There's 4 wrestlers that are in this game that you cannot play as.
Oh, I forgot about that.
And they show up in the tag match. I know they're in round robin. I don't think they're in the championship tag version, but they're in the round robin tag matches. I can tell you that. So you have Giant Baba, with Rusher Kimura, and then you have Mitsuru Misawa and Toshiki Kawada. Those are the four that you cannot play as, but yet they can be in the game if you play the round robin tag match. They're two of the teams that you have to face. So
right. Yep. Okay. All right. Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah. I don't know whether they're only available like in that mode. That doesn't. That doesn't. Yeah, that does like kind of seem weird.
Yeah.
But so there are like two tips and tricks you can also use this game if you want to. You can use the ropes to kind of to hurt an opponent also. By studying them to learn which push your opponent toward the ropes by using whatever moves are best upon them. Apparently the game keeps track of how hard they hit the ropes, because the more they hit the ropes, the harder to hit the ropes. I mean to say, the more it affects them. So, which is a very interesting trick. So, you definitely want to use some some ring ropes to your advantage. But and also in tag team mode, if you want to change out your opponent's partner on your terms, you can just run toward them and just charge toward them attack them. So which is pretty interesting. So anyway, I think that's so I think it's most of how the game plays. I'm just thinking about anything else here. Do you want to say about Joe as far as the actual wrestling game itself, or how it's portrayed in the game, or whatnot? So,
no, I think we pretty much covered it.
Okay, all right, but the game got very mixed reviews when it came out. I mean, it's I've never seen a game that probably got this much of a difference in a difference of opinion, because it's as you mentioned upon earlier, this is different. This is a different wrestling game. So obviously it makes sense. Some people are going to love it, some people are going to hate it, because reviews of the game are all over the place. Some people, some of the reviews are very, very negative. Some of the reviews are very, very positive. So it's it really ran the gauntlet as far as the reviews went. So it's to give some examples. Game players are more on the positive side. They gave the game 84 out of 100. Game pros more on the negative side. They gave the game only 2.5 out of 5. So just to give a couple examples as far as how mixed the reviews were. So, and those reviews kind of pretty much continue the same today, as far as contemporary opinion about the game. So, it was obviously popular enough or maybe cheap enough for them to release 3 times the Virtual Console. So there's that. So at least the game is easily playable today, because eBay, there's not many copies of the game available on eBay. Probably had a small print run. That's probably one reason for it. But I mean the game's on there. You can find it, but it's not it's not the most easiest game the easiest game to pick from. I only found 10 copies of this game available for sale right now, and only 5 copies of the game sold recently. I in the last 9 days. So I'll just give those sold prices. 4 out of 5 of those sold auctions were card only. Those games sold for $30, $32.50. They're $32.50 twice, to $41. These prices include shipping. The one CIV copy that sold recently sold for $90.
Yes.
So more expensive on the terms of Super NES pricing as far as the game goes, but obviously if you're a Super NES fan or a wrestling fan, you can't get this game for your collection without breaking the bank.
Yeah.
And like I said before, since the game's available on the Switch, if you want to play it, you can get it much easier that way. I'm not sure how much the game goes for on the Switch. It's probably cheap. So
it's part of the Virtual Console. I mean, not the Virtual Console, the SNES pack. So all you need is a Nintendo Online.
Okay. All right. Got it. So, all right. So, yeah. So, final thoughts. This is definitely a very wrestling game of its time period. I think in some ways it's dated. But I also think in some ways, like Joe said, this game does kind of show what the series would eventually turn into, the Fire Pro Wrestling game. I played some of the newest Fire Pro Wrestling games. It's pretty fun. I do like that game.
Yeah.
So,
especially once you know what you're doing.
Yeah, exactly. So, I'm not the biggest. So I'm not. So I'm not gonna be the biggest person to ask about this game because I'm not a huge wrestling fan like Joe is. But for what the game was, I liked it. I thought it was a bit slow. I thought it was a bit clunky. I don't like the power bar system at all. But considering what the game is trying to do for you with the whole timing system for time, and whatnot, it works out very well. I thought, it's a fun wrestling game. It's an easier wrestling game to play because it is based upon timing than button mashing. I think once you learn, with the big footnote here being once you learn the combos, what you're doing because to be like I said, I also got my butt kicked the first time I played it. I tried playing this game too, but go into right. But if you're a wrestling fan who enjoys old games and enjoys timing games instead, I think you should have some fun with this. I think this game would be very. I think this game's appeal increases greatly multiplayer mode if you're playing against other humans. So I definitely can see having a lot of fun with it that way. So so recommend within limits, I guess, is the way that I would probably sum this game up.
Yeah.
And what about you, Joe? You said you had some thoughts about this.
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is one of those, it's a precursor to a series that became popular. So, should you try it out? Yes, you should at least give it a look. You should at least fire it up, especially if you have a Switch and you have Nintendo Online. It's there for practically free. So, yes, you should at least give it a go. Do I expect you to probably stick with it? Probably not. It can be very frustrating when you're trying to learn how to get the timing down and all that other stuff, that you're going to lose. You are going to lose in this game, and that's something that you have to accept, is that you're going to lose. If you do not like losing, this is not the game for you.
And the default difficulty level is easy, by the way.
Right. The default level is easy, and yet you will still get your butt kicked. So that's something to keep in mind. I don't think I've ever increased the difficulty on any Fire Pro Wrestling game, let alone this one. I always play on easy, and I still got my butt kicked. So, yeah. At the price point, yes, if you're a collector, absolutely $30 to get this cart, I'd do it. You know what I mean? These carts are only going to disappear. They're not making any more of them. So yes, for that, definitely get it. But if you're just looking to play this game, the Switch is your best option. I don't recommend paying $30 for the cartridge just to play it. And I mean, it is what it is.
Yeah, I think this game suffers. Yeah, I think this game suffers from. Unfortunately, I think this game suffers the same fate that many other sports games suffer from. Except from the fact that most of them just don't age very well.
Yeah, it's a product of its time.
It's yeah, exactly. So I mean, maybe you prefer how wrestling was done back then as opposed to now. In which case, then this game is actually based upon a licensed Japanese game. It's a very good portrayal of how Japanese wrestling was in the time period. So, so if you enjoy that kind of style, this game's probably up your alley. So, as I said. Yeah, but beyond that, it's there are better wrestling games out there, both retro and also modern style games for sure. So, but anyway, so I think that wraps up our coverage of Natsume Championship Wrestling. Anything else you want to say about the game, Joe? Before we finish up here?
I think we pretty much said all we can.
Okay. Speaking about games, next time on the podcast, we are keeping up a tradition going that George and I had done during the time he was here on the podcast. We're going to be doing a year review special. We're going to be talking about our some of the games we covered over the year and which ones we liked the most, which ones we hated the most. So just very informal. Informal, just summary of the year and whatnot before moving on to 2022. So. And we have more great games planned for next year. Some more guest host appearances lined up as I said before. So stay tuned for all that stuff, for sure. Yep. So anyway, if you have any questions, comments, feedback, suggestions, you can find us on Facebook. You can also send me an email to the SNES podcast at yahoo.com if you wish. Joe has turned social media back on, so you can reach him that way.
Yep.
So that way, you get it if you want to.
You can find me on Facebook.
Okay. Cool. So, anyway, thank you again for thank you again for tuning in the podcast as always. And one last question, I guess I can just ask you, Joe, in general, since you talked about this like a little bit, to kind of like finish things up here. Do you ever go back and watch like 90s style wrestling, either like American, like Japanese style, or do you do you think overall wrestling's better now as opposed to like back then?
So it depends on how you watch and view wrestling. So I grew up obviously on the 80s and 90s stuff, and into the 2000s. So for me, I can go back, I can watch like some of my best memories are like, you know, SummerSlam 91, and like, you know, the Mega Powers explode, and, you know, that whole thing with Macho Man and Hogan. But then, like, you know, despite, you know, the things that, you know, I grew up with, like the pivotal point for me was WrestleMania 12 when I saw Shawn Michaels, who at the time very much resembled me. I was a small, lanky kid who couldn't get an ounce of muscle on his body. So, I mean, obviously Shawn Michaels had muscle where I did not, but, you know, he was a smaller guy who was able to get in the ring, not only beat Bret Hart, who was an amazing technician in the ring, but also he captured the championship, which was before then, you know, basically ruled by the dinosaurs, you know, and I don't mean dinosaurs as being old, I mean dinosaurs as being giant and huge. Hogan was a big hulk of a man. That's why he got the name Hulk Hogan. You had Andre the Giant. You had big guys like Macho Man. Like, it was Ultimate Warrior. Like, it was all about muscle-bound guys. And Shawn Michaels was like, you know, a midget compared to them. So it opened the door for me. That match alone, you know, at WrestleMania 12 changed my life. So, I mean, can I go back and watch that stuff now? Yes. Now, watching some of the older All Japan Pro Wrestling stuff or New Japan Pro Wrestling stuff is a little tough, just because, like I said, you have no English commentary. And sometimes I like to just listen to the commentary. I'll put wrestling on in the background, you know, like someone watching a baseball game or something. Like, that's how I am.
Yeah.
So, you know, I can listen to it and, you know, and know what's going on. With some of the old Japanese wrestling, I can't do that. So as far as Japanese wrestling goes, I prefer anything that's come out in the last 10 years. But as far as American wrestling goes, I can go all the way back to the 70s and watch some of the WWF stuff, and with Bruno Sammartino and whatnot, and thoroughly enjoy it. So, you know, it really comes down to, unfortunately, you know, not understanding the Japanese language and, you know, all that. And really, Japanese, you know, wrestling is starting to become popular in the U.S. now, so it's kind of nice to be able to say, hey, 10 years ago I started watching this thing, and now look at it. You know what I mean? So.
Oh, yeah. Yep, definitely. Definitely, for sure. So, okay. So I guess, like, you know, your enjoyment of this game would definitely depend upon maybe your knowledge of German of wrestling, like, the time period, for sure.
Yeah,
so, you know, yeah, that makes sense. Okay. All right, then. Well, thank you very much for joining us, everybody. We'll see you again in 2 weeks, as always. And stay safe out there. Be well, and we'll see you again next time. Later, all.
Nintendo controls 80% of the video market. But no matter how you play the game, or which game you play, things definitely have come a long way since Pac-Man.
Now you're playing with power. Super power.